This is really one of the most important things to be able to understand, and I'm probably going to make an entire video series about this, kind of similar to what I did with the quarterbacks and really getting in depth into the wrist flick, but really it has to do with foot contact, because so much of what it ends up happening with how our leg is cycling the ground, how fast we're able to run, and really the quality of our foot strike has to do with how it is that we're able to strike the ground, and really the relationship that we have with the ground as we are contacting, striking it, and really absorbing it. And really the understanding that you want to be able to have here is we have to, the best of our ability, be able to recycle the energy being utilized in the foot strike to then be able to transition into toe off. So we don't want to be creating energy or trying to create energy as our foot's on the ground. We're really recycling the energy that we're using to strike the ground to then be able to cycle right back up and through. And so what I see here is when you end up striking the ground too far back, right? So the further back into the foot, if I'm landing on my heel, the middle part of my foot, and potentially even the outside part of my foot, what happens here is now as I'm transitioning my weight forward, I end up having to spend a lot more time on the ground. I'm not able to get up onto my toe or on the front edge of my foot as fast, and that even can go into a whole nother concept, which is just where is the weight coming off of the foot, or how are we coming off of the foot. But the better we could do at being able to get up onto the big toe, and the faster we can, that impacts the angle of how that foot comes off the ground. So the further it takes us for our foot to be able to toe off, then the more we're going to be stuck with our foot back behind us here. Okay, so then if our foot's stuck back behind, now it's going to be difficult. We're going to have to be spending more time with our foot back behind before we can bring the foot back through to then be able to generate a good quality foot strike, right? Because now if I can't get my foot back through well, then when I strike the ground, I could be striking too far back on the outside, my foot comes across, all those things end up happening from how our foot ends up coming off the ground. And most of this ends up being really started from how is it that we start? How do we accelerate? Because if we accelerate and our hips are behind and we're not getting good quality knee drive, we're in a position where, you know, maybe our arms are not properly synced up with our lower body, we're not using the full action of our arm to be able to generate the proper momentum. This all makes a big impact into and a big difference into the quality of the foot strike. Again, that's like the main part of this video, is just understanding how important quality foot strike is, and really being able to understand within yourself, like, how can you do a better job of being able to maximize it, and what does maximizing it even look like, right? These are things, these are questions that should be, if you're a sprinter, if you take this serious, as this is something that really matters to you, this is something that you should already be understanding or trying to understand better. And hopefully with this video, we can get just better overall grasp of it. So I'm using the band here to be able to make it so I'm getting some degree of a pull back. So now I'm going to really have to emphasize the hips through. You don't have to have the band by any means, but what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to strike the ground, and you can see as I'm striking the ground, I'm transitioning that force into the ground right back into extension within the foot. So I'm not getting stuck. So a couple things that I see when people first do this, and this is a common drill that I do with really everybody, and a lot of people, I'm just repeating it over and over and over again, because it helps them being able to understand and really conceptualize in a very slow, controlled environment that this step wants to be landing underneath, right? So I'm pulling my hip through as I'm really pulling my foot underneath. So these two actions are, I'm bringing closer together, right? And as I'm doing that, I'm generating this force and recycling it right back into that vertical action. So then I'm able to get that fast turnover and really be able to understand and most effectively utilize my leg cycle, my foot time off of the ground, my turnover speed. So what we see is people will land with their foot out in front too much, right? So then again, now it takes too long for them to be able to get into that position, or they just really lack the ability to be able to strike and utilize that force and really maximize the extension in the toe off, or have a hard time being able to coordinate this foot strike into the extension. And another thing too, we'll see people that just are very caught up in creating downward force, right? They want to be striking the ground like that. Want to be striking the ground flat. We're not trying to strike the ground flat or straight vertical. We're trying to get a pull here. So typically I tell people, like, keep your foot a little bit low as you're striking the ground, and we want to be striking it in, and we talked about this before, in like a pronated position, right? So I want to be, you know, my big toe wants to be a little bit lower than my pinky toe as I'm striking the ground. So then as I'm hitting, I'm able to absorb into some degree of supination. So pronation, essentially, if I look at my whole body, the whole kinetic chain, what pronation does is this, right? This is not optimal for a strong kinetic chain. If I didn't have the band on, it would be able to represent it better. But if I just did this and just think about, like, can I jump from this position? How powerful do I feel in really any direction from this position? In comparison to absorb through supination, in this position, same thing. How powerful do you feel here? How stable do you feel here? How in control do you feel here? You're going to feel way more control in this position than you're going to in this position. So we want to be landing with our body in this position so then we can absorb here. I see a lot of people land here and then they absorb into pronation, which again, that leads to longer foot contact times, but also leads to shin splints and overuse injuries and all those types of things because you really don't have much support here. The biggest support system that you have is your bone right here. That's what's really supporting this. That's why you have the shin splints, or plantar fasciitis ends up being another thing too, because everything responds at the bottom of the foot has to lengthen and has to really tighten because it's stuck in a lengthened position where really those muscles should be contracting when you are walking and moving and going into different extension. But if you end up with the flatter foot, right, now what that does is that makes it so now you end up having to be a little bit more at risk for things like plantar fasciitis or being super tight within that back chain or that back line, right? Everything from like the hamstrings, glute, low back, all those muscles are going to be tighter. And not that you can't be successful with flat feet. You can be very successful with flat feet, but you have to be able to build up the control within your foot to be able to really understand landing in a plantar flex position and being able to stabilize effectively so then we could push right back off. A lot of people end up being very weak in their lower half of their foot because they end up being more flat-footed and not understanding how to be able to control and stabilize and really understand balance. But if you can have flat feet and maintain great balance and maintain great control of the foot and therefore build muscle on top of that, it actually helps you when it comes to sprinting because you have a wider surface to be able to control. The force dissipates through a wider surface, which ends up helping you. You just have to have the proper muscle built up above the foot, really even within the foot too, to be able to still run fast. So that ends up being a big part of understanding just that foot strike, right? So we talked a lot about what ends up being the main part of the video, which is understanding the striking the ground, okay? And then once you get better, we can improve that by getting more height, right? We can improve that by getting more or different types of actions within the movement. So I don't have to only be doing it from a step. I could start to be able to create different environments for me to be able to still feel that same type of action. So with that being said, as always, thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations, leave those down below. We'll probably make some more videos about this because there's just so much that I could talk about from here, and I actually have to kind of go. So I just want to make a quick video just to give some degree of understanding because I'm getting a lot of questions and really having to explain this to a lot of people a lot. And so I want to be able to make a video to be able to help it out. So yeah, as always, again, like, subscribe, and check out the description. We have some great programs, some great ways to be able to help you in improving your speed, and there's more to come in terms of some partnerships that I've been doing and really getting deep into a lot of data. That's part of the reason why I haven't been posting as much, so sorry about that. We'll get back on the consistent schedule here pretty soon. I've just been traveling and just doing a lot of stuff, but I know that I'm doing this for the good of the people that are in the programs, right? The people that are actually in programs. I've been doing a lot for you guys. I want to be able to create more education videos and be able to help you guys out as well. So here it is. Going to be able to be very quality focused here with this type of video, not quantity focused.